I'm going to do one of those while you're in there kind of videos. I had filmed a short with my phone the other day, just for the sake of somebody else who's installing one of these Z-Engineering Superchargers, and I figured I might do it with the GoPro camera to get a little bit better footage and be able to cover it a little bit better. For anybody who is delving into installing a Z-Engineering Supercharger, they're now sold by RUF Engineering in Germany. I don't know if they still sell them for the 12-valve VR6 or not, but there are plenty of used kits out there. But there is a lot of confusion about how to actually make it work. So there's a few tensioner things going on here. This little deal right here, it's a cam bolt. It's tightened with this bolt here on the end, and you insert a rod into this hole, loosen this bolt, and you can lever against this cam. It will rotate, and that adds tension to the supercharger belt that drives from the main drive pulley to the main sprocket pulley on the impeller itself. It's a direct drive system. It does not have a planetary gear set. Oh, point Loma, pause. Waiting for the plane to go by. So what you want to do is put enough tension on it that you can turn the belt 30 degrees when you twist it. That's what they spec for tension on this. When you bolt the supercharger to the head, there are going to be two bolts. One is a collar bolt and the other just uses a nut on it. The lower one has a little bit of a slot down inside there, which allows you to change the angle of the supercharger. And that's really mainly to be able to fit it under the hood here, because you can see this sticks up a bit and that could interfere with your hood. So you have to kind of angle it down and make sure that it's in the right zone. But it does also affect the tension on your main serpentine belt. The other thing that's going on is down inside here, there is the adjustment tensioner pulley system, and there's two bolts. One's on the very end and one is down here. In order to tension this properly, you have to have this main bolt loose, not all the way loose, but not tightened down. And then you use what should be a 10mm bolt on the very end down there. And that will allow you to move the tensioner pulley back and forth on its bracket and get tension on the main serpentine belt. Again, the ideal is that you can turn the belt 30 degrees. Now mine is a little looser than I would prefer right now on the long side. I can probably turn it 45, and I'm gonna have to do a little bit more monkey work to get it properly tightened. I did discover that since this is a used kit, the idler pulley that came with it on the tensioner had a worn out pulley bearing, and it was making a lot of noise, and that's just a bad thing. So you can replace it with the idler pulley from your regular VR6 tensioner, except it's going to interfere with this bracket right here. It's a little bit wider, so I had to modify that pulley in order to fit on here. I'll show that in a different video. I am trying to find the original pulley that it was off of. I've written to RUF or RUF Engineering to find out if they can connect me with their supplier and find a source for the actual pulley that's supposed to come with it. But modifying the factory idler tensioner pulley works. So you can use that and get you up and going. But there's also a few things here that are like very tricky. There's a special kind of dual threaded bolt that goes in there that you have another threaded rod running through to adjust the tension. I screwed mine up, which is problematic, and so I'm gonna have to replace that or fix it. So all of that's gonna have to come off at some point. But in order to properly tension it, yeah, you loosen this main one, adjust it, and then after you've adjusted that bolt on the end, then you come back and you tighten this one again, and that should snug it down. Any final adjustment you should be able to use with that last bolt that does the angling. But again, this is mainly to be able to fit this physically under here. It will affect the tension in the main serpentine belt a little bit. So adjust this first, get your angle first so it fits, and then come down and do the tension with that pulley here. Hopefully that's clear as mud, but folks had been asking how do you do this, and there aren't a lot of great instructions out there. Up. Point Wilma, pause. Anyway, as we did the supercharger install video, there are a few things that you need to be aware of. The Corrado itself has this weird side bendy 90-degree that is necessary in order to clear the shock tower. It's different from the Mark III installation. The Mark III just uses a 90 and it goes straight across. Everything sits a little differently. In my installation, I trimmed this piece of hose too much. I was starting with a generic piece from, I forget who the manufacturer is, but it's just sort of generic with like a 15-degree bend in it. And I trimmed it too much, so I ended up having to add a little spacer piece in the middle. I will be replacing this with a single piece without this spacer in the center, and that'll be less likely for boost leaks down the line. Also, the idle stabilizer valve for the OBD1 setup is plumbed in here at this 90 degree, so it can go right into the throttle body. The breather pipe that comes out of the head is going around over here to where I have an oil catch can, feeds out of the oil catch can back around into the intake of the supercharger. And again, with the Corrado, the original installations had you put the mass airflow sensor here in the middle, and that led to a lot of drivability problems because of the turbulence from the supercharger. They also found problems if you stuck it right there too. So what you have to do is extend your mass airflow sensor wiring harness and put the mass airflow sensor down inside the fender. So I've got the filter, an airflow straightener right between the filter and the mass airflow sensor. And then we've got the mass airflow sensor plumbed up into the intake of the supercharger right there. So it's a little bit more complex than one would hope. Also worth mentioning, you need to have a check valve coming out of this vacuum hose, which feeds the secondary air and EGR recirculation stuff. There's a purge valve. You need to have a one-way check valve to make sure that boost pressure does not feed back into the system and cause you issues with all that. So, hope that helped any of you that are trying to install a used Z-Engineering Supercharger kit on your VR6. You can feel free to leave questions in the comments, as well as reach out to me if you've got questions now that I've been down this a little bit. There are lots of challenges with installing a used kit, namely that, it usually doesn't have all the parts you need. One of my friends just got a used kit and it's missing this, and I think it's missing that, so he's having to piece together a lot of this stuff. You can put it all together with some creativity, but yeah, it's got to take some creative engineering if you're missing the parts. Oh, also worth mentioning, if you underneath here is the ECU, right? And make sure the kit you buy has the software you need for your car. There are fewer and fewer manufacturers out there making the software for a supercharged VR6. Now mine happens to be an OBD1 with the distributor. C2 Engineering does make the software for that, so you can buy the chip right off their website or email them and get that. That'll plug into your ECU and it'll work just fine. There are a couple of companies in the UK, I believe, that do make the software as well. If you've got an OBD1 with the coil pack, there are far fewer options. And I'm finding that for folks that are doing that, you probably need to do the upgrade to OBD2 and When you have the OBD2 software set up, there are a lot more options available for forced induction. But just to give you a heads up, finding the right software is a challenge in addition to finding all the hardware that you need to make this happen. The other thing out there is, this is a version 1 of the Z-Engineering Supercharger. It's got a straight ribbed belt. The newer versions have cog belt setups, at least for this drive. They don't use a cog for the main serpentine belt because you have to switch everything over for that, although you probably could make that happen with Groove Engineering cogged pulleys. But they use a cogged setup on this main belt. If you do have this, here, look, here's the belt number. It's a Continental belt. You can find it. It's still available out there. It's a Poly V 190J, made by Continental. Here's some part numbers. They're out there. I got mine on Amazon. It was about 40 bucks. So they're out there. And you can reach out to RUF, and they're fairly responsive, although if you bought it used, you know, they're not really obligated to help you with anything. But they like to see their stuff working, so reach out to them. Anyway, hope this helped. God bless. Good luck. Keep it shiny side up, and watch out for the low-flying planes. Bye-bye.
And on that terrible disappointment, it's time to say goodbye. We'll be back.